Hello and welcome to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast number 37. In this week's show we have feedback, a quick look into the future, and the creatures that turned Doctor Who from a casual viewing television show into a national mania.
Come here, you scrumptious little beauty. A box?
Doctor, what is it?
I've got mail.
Following last week's show where we looked at the Cybermen, Daniel Ryder from the Facebook page Doctor Who numeral 2 said, "Nicely done, and very thorough. I really like that you looked not just at the show but also at some books like David Banks' Iceberg. I was actually thinking about Iceberg the other day because I'd always thought that Terry Cutler had died in the 10th Planet, but I found that he was alive and well apparently in Banks' book." Thanks for that, Daniel, and thanks too for your support for the podcast. If you have any feedback about the podcast, please feel free to comment on Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast on Facebook, or you can email me at respectthething@outlook.com. You can also send in audio feedback if you prefer to do it that way. Please send it to the same email address, and please try and keep it under 2 minutes.
Let's just see if the scanner can't shed a little light on what's going on there in the vortex.
Recently through the Facebook page I was asked if I'd be doing a podcast on the Day of the Doctor and the Christmas special. The answer to both questions is yes, but I'll probably in both cases do it the week after the episode has aired, in order to allow time for those who don't watch them on broadcast to catch up. But before then, I'll be drawing our sometime series on the Master to a close by sharing my thoughts on who I would like to see play the Master opposite Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. I'll also be taking a look at Unit Medical Officer and all too brief companion to the 4th Doctor, Harry Sullivan. And of course it's November, so that means a close look at the 11th Doctor himself, Matt Smith. But all that's to come over the next few weeks, so for now let's crack on with this week's episode.
Earth mission to Dalek command! Earth mission to Dalek command! Answer! Answer!
The Daleks were conceived by science fiction writer Terry Nation, and first appeared in the 1963 Doctor Who serial The Daleks, in the shells designed by Raymond Cusack. Within the programme narrative, the Daleks are cyborgs created by the scientist Davros during the final years of a 1,000-year war against the Thals. He genetically modified the Kaleds from the planet Skaro and integrated them within a tank-like robotic mechanical shell. His final modification was to remove their ability to feel pity, compassion or remorse. The Daleks soon came to view themselves as the supreme race in the universe, beginning a quest for universal extermination and domination. Various storylines portray them as having had every emotion removed except hate, leaving them with a desire to purge the universe from all non-Dalek life. Collectively, they're the greatest enemies of the Doctor. During the Time War, the Daleks were almost completely killed off. They're popularly known for their catchphrase, "Exterminate!" and are a well-recognised foe, having appeared in 97 episodes of Doctor Who as of April 2013. Of course, in July 2013, the BBC announced that the Daleks will return alongside the Zygons in the 50th anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor.
Alien aggressors eliminated! Scan for primary target!
The Daleks were created by writer Terry Nation and designed by BBC designer Raymond Cusack. They were introduced in the December 1963 story The Daleks. They became an immediate and huge hit with the viewers, featuring in many subsequent serials and 2 1960s films. They've become as synonymous with Doctor Who as the Doctor himself, and their behaviour and catchphrases are now part of British popular culture. In 2010, readers of science fiction magazine SFX voted the Dalek as the all-time greatest monster, beating out competition including Japanese movie monster Godzilla and Tolkien's Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Externally, Daleks normally resemble human-sized pepper pots, with a single mechanical eye stalk mounted on a rotating dome, a gun mount containing a gun stick, and a telescopic manipulator arm, which is usually tipped by an appendage resembling a sink plunger. Daleks have been seen to be able to use these sink plungers to interface with technology, to crush a man's skull by suction, to measure the intelligence of a subject, and extract information from a man's mind. Dalek casings are made of a bonded polycarbide material dubbed Dalekanium by a member of the human resistance in the Dalek invasion of Earth, and by the cult of Skaro in the Daleks in Manhattan. Of course, seasoned viewers of Doctor Who will remember the same term being used by Shura in the third Doctor story Day of the Daleks to describe the only explosive that's effective against the Daleks. The lower half of a Dalek is covered with hemispherical protozoarians, or Dalek bumps, which are shown in the episode Dalek to be spheres embedded in the casing. In that 2005 episode Dalek, these are shown to serve a function in the Dalek's self-destruction mechanism. Their armour has a force field that evaporates most bullets and resists most types of energy weapon. This seems to be concentrated around the Dalek's midsection, where the mutant inside is located. As normally ineffective firepower can be concentrated on the eye stalk to blind a Dalek. Daleks seem to have a very limited field of vision with no peripheral sight at all, and are relatively easy to hide from in fairly exposed places. Their own energy weapons have also been shown to be capable of destroying each other. Those weapons fire a beam that has electrical tendencies and is capable of propagating through water and may be a form of plasma. The eyepiece itself is the Dalek's most vulnerable spot. Impairing its vision often leads to a blind, panicked firing of the Dalek weapon.
All inferior creatures are to be considered the enemy of the Daleks.
As the creature inside the Dalek is rarely seen on screen, a common misconception exists that the Daleks are wholly mechanical robots. The Khaled mutants are in fact octopus-like, and many are coloured green. The creature inside the mechanical casing is depicted as soft and repulsive in appearance, and vicious even without its mechanical armour. The first ever glimpse of a Dalek mutant in the Daleks was a claw peeking out from under a Thal cloak after it had been removed from its casing. The actual appearance of the mutants has varied, but often adheres to the Doctor's description of the species in remembrance of the Daleks as little green blobs in bonded polycarbide armour. In Resurrection of the Daleks, a Dalek creature separated from its casing attacks and severely injures a human soldier. In Revelation of the Daleks, there are two Dalek factions, Imperial and Renegade, and the creatures inside have a different appearance in each case, one resembling the amorphous creature from Resurrection, and the other the crab-like creature from the original Dalek serial. As of the new series, Daleks are retconned to be mollusk-like in appearance, with small tentacles, one or two eyes, and an exposed brain. The voice of a Dalek is electronic, but when it's out of its casing, the Khaled mutant is apparently unable to make much more than squeaking sounds. Once the mutant is removed, the casing itself can be entered and operated by humanoids. For example, in the Daleks, Ian Chesterton enters a Dalek shell to appear as a guard as part of an escape plan.
Stairs. It's not like it. It hasn't got legs, it's stuck. It's coming. Oh. Get up!
Great big alien death machine, defeated by a flight of stairs.
Now listen to me. I demand that you return to your cage. If you want to negotiate, then I can guarantee that Mr. Van Statten will be willing to talk. I accept that we imprisoned you, and maybe that was wrong. But people have died, and that stops right now. The killing stops. Have you got that? I demand that you surrender. Is that clear?
Elevate!
For many years it was assumed that due to their design and gliding motion, Daleks weren't able to climb the stairs, and that was an easy way of escaping from them. A well-known cartoon from Private Eye pictured a group of Daleks at the foot of a flight of stairs with the caption, "Well, this certainly buggers up our plan to conquer the universe." In a scene from the serial Destiny of the Daleks, the Doctor and his companions escape from Dalek pursuers by climbing into a ceiling duct. The Fourth Doctor then calls down, "If you're supposed to be the superior race of the universe, why don't you try climbing after us?" The Daleks make up for their general lack of mobility with overwhelming firepower though, many fans joking that real Daleks don't climb stairs, they just level the building. Dalek mobility has improved of course over the history of the series. In their first appearance they were only capable of movement on the conductive metal floors in their city. In the Dalek Invasion of Earth, a Dalek emerges from the waters of the River Thames, indicating that they're not only freely mobile now, but they're also amphibious. Planet of the Daleks showed that they could ascend a vertical shaft by means of an external anti-gravity mat placed on the floor, and Revelation of the Daleks showed Davros in his life support chair and one of his Daleks hovering. Remembrance of the Daleks then depicts them as capable of hovering up a flight of stairs. Despite all of this, journalists covering the series frequently refer to the Daleks' supposed inability to climb stairs. Characters escaping up a flight of stairs in the 2005 episode Dalek made that same joke, and were shocked when the Dalek began to hover up the stairs, uttering the new phrase, "Elevate!" in a similar manner to their normal phrase, "Exterminate!" And finally, Daleks in Manhattan depicts the Daleks as fully capable of flight. The non-humanoid shape of the Dalek did much to enhance the creature's sense of menace. A lack of familiar reference points differentiated them from the traditional bug-eyed monster of science fiction, which Doctor Who creator Sidney Newman wanted to avoid. The unsettling form of the Daleks, coupled with their alien voices, made many believe that the props were wholly mechanical and operated by remote control. They were, of course, actually controlled from inside by human operators, who had to manipulate their eye stalks, domes and arms, as well as flashing the lights on their heads in sync with the actors supplying the voices. The Dalek cases were built in two pieces. An operator would step into the lower section, and then the top would be secured. The operators then looked out between the cylindrical louvres just beneath the dome, which were lined with mesh to conceal their faces. In addition to being hot and cramped, the Dalek casings also muffled external sounds, making it difficult for the operators to hear the director's commands or studio dialogue. John Scott Martin, a Dalek operator from the original series, said that Dalek operation was a challenge. You had to have about 6 hands. One to do the eye stalk, one to do the lights, one for the gun, and another for the smoke canister underneath, yet another for the sink plunger. If you were related to an octopus, then it certainly helped. In the 2005 version of the Dalek casings retain the same overall shape and dimensional proportions as previous Daleks, although many details have been redesigned to give the Dalek a heavier and more solid look. The changes include a larger, more pointed base, a glowing eyepiece, an all-over metallic brass finish, thicker nailed stripes on the neck section, a housing for the eye stalk pivot, and significantly larger dome lights. The new prop made its on-screen debut in the 2005 episode Dalek. These Dalek cases use a human operator inside the housing, while the head and eye stalk are operated via remote control, and Nicholas Briggs supplies the voices in their various appearances. In the 2010 season, a new and larger model appeared in several colours, representing different parts of the Dalek command hierarchy.
We obey no one! We are the superior being!
Terry Nation's original plan was for the Daleks to glide across the floor. Early versions of the Daleks rolled on nylon casters propelled by the operator's feet. Although the casters were adequate for the Daleks' debut serial, which was shot entirely at the BBC's Lime Grove studios, for the Dalek Invasion of Earth, Terry Nation wanted the Daleks to be filmed on the streets of London. To enable them to travel smoothly on location, designer Spencer Chapman built the new Dalek shells around miniature tricycles with sturdier wheels, which were then hidden by enlarged fenders fitted below the original base. The uneven flagstones of central London caused the Daleks to rattle as they moved, and it wasn't possible to remove this noise from the final soundtrack. A small parabolic dish was added to the rear of the prop's casing to explain why these Daleks, unlike the ones in the first serials, were not dependent on static electricity drawn from the floors of the Dalek city for their motive power. Later versions of the prop had more efficient wheels and were once again simply propelled by the seated operator's feet. But they remained so heavy that when going up ramps they often had to be pushed by stagehands out of camera shot. The difficulty of operating all the prop's parts at once contributed to the occasional jerky movements, but this problem was largely eradicated with the advent of the new series version, which has a remotely controlled dome and eye stalk to allow the operator to concentrate on the smooth movement of the Dalek and its other appendages.
Sound profile analyzing. Matching to data files.
The staccato delivery, harsh tone and rising inflection of the Dalek voice were initially developed by voice actors Peter Hawkins and David Graham. who would vary the pitch and speed of the lines according to the emotion needed. The voices were further processed electronically by Brian Hodgson at the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. Although the exact sound processing devices used have varied, the original 1963 effect used equalization to boost the mid-range of the actor's voice, then subjected it to ring modulation with a 30 Hz sine wave. The distinctive harsh grating vocal timbre is produced and has remained the pattern for all Dalek voices ever since, with the exception of those in the 1985 serial Revelation of the Daleks, for which Graham Harper deliberately used less distortion. Besides Hawkins and Graham, notable voice actors for the Daleks have included Roy Skelton, who first voiced the Daleks in the 1967 story The Evil of the Daleks, and went on to provide voices for the 5 additional Dalek serials, including Planet of the Daleks, and for the 20th anniversary special The 5 Doctors. Michael Wisher, the actor who originated the role of Davros, provided Dalek voices for that same story, as well as for Frontier in Space, Planet of the Daleks, and Death to the Daleks. Other Dalek voice actors include Royce Mills, Brian Miller, Oliver Gilbert, and Peter Messerline. John Leeson, the voice of K9 in several stories, and Davros actors Terry Malloy and David Goodison also contributed supporting voices of various Dalek serials. Since 2005, of course, the Dalek voice in the television series has been provided by Nicholas Briggs. Briggs had previously provided Dalek and other alien voices for Big Finish audio plays. In a 2006 BBC radio interview, Briggs said that when the BBC asked him to do the voice for the new television series, they instructed him to bring his own analogue ring modulator that he'd used in the audio plays. The BBC's sound department had changed to a digital platform and couldn't adequately create the distinctive Dalek sound with their modern equipment. Briggs actually went as far to bring that voice modulator to the read-throughs.
I am a soldier. I was bred to receive orders.
Manufacturing the props was expensive. In scenes where many Daleks had to appear, some of them would be represented by wooden replicas or life-size photographic enlargements in the early black and white episodes. In stories involving armies of Daleks, the BBC effects team even turned to using commercially available toy Daleks, such as in The Power of the Daleks, The Evil of the Daleks, and The Planet of the Daleks. Editing techniques have also given the impression that there were more Dalek props than were actually available, and these continue to be used in the present day, such as using split-screen techniques in The Parting of the Ways. 4 fully functioning props were commissioned for the first serial, The Daleks, in 1963, and were constructed from BBC plans by Shawcraft Engineering. These became known as Mark I Daleks. The BBC's own Dalek props were reused many times, with components of the original Shawcraft Mark I Daleks surviving right through to their final classic series appearance in 1988. Years of storage and repainting, however, took their toll. By the time of the 6th Doctor story Revelation of the Daleks, new props were being manufactured out of fiberglass, which were lighter and more affordable to construct. These Daleks were slightly bulkier in appearance, and around the mid-shoulder section, they also had a slightly redesigned skirt section, which was more vertical at the back. These same props were painted grey for the 7th Doctor serial Remembrance of the Daleks, and designated as Renegade Daleks. Another redesign, painted in cream and gold, became the Imperial Dalek faction. New Dalek props were built for the revived show in 2005. The first, which appeared alone in the episode Dalek, was built by model maker Mike Tucker. Additional Dalek props based on Tucker's original master plan were subsequently built out of fiberglass by Cardiff-based firm Specialist Models.
Behold the restoration of the Daleks!
Dalek history has seen many retroactive changes, which have caused continuity problems. When the Daleks first appeared in the story of the same name, they were presented as the descendants of the Dals, mutated after a brief nuclear war between the Dals and the Thal races, 500 years previously. This race of Daleks is destroyed when their power supply is wrecked. However, they appear in the Dalek invasion of Earth, where they've conquered the Earth in the 22nd century. Later stories saw them develop time travel and even a space empire.
What's that on his jacket?
Radiation detector. Gas mask. The two things don't go together, do they?
Part of his uniform is made of animal skins, and yet the combat jacket is a modern synthetic fibre.
Like finding the remains of a Stone Age man and a transistor radio.
Playing rock music?
1,000-year war. Civilization on the point of collapse.
What?
Nothing. Just theorizing, that's all. Come along.
In 1975, Terry Nation revised the Daleks' origins in Genesis of the Daleks, where the Dals were now called Khaleds, of which of course Daleks is an anagram, and the Dalek design was attributed to Davros. Instead of a short nuclear exchange, the Khaled-Thal War was portrayed as a 1,000-year-long war of attrition, fought with nuclear, biological and chemical weapons, causing widespread mutations among the Khaled race. Davros experimented on living Khaled cells to find the ultimate mutated form of the Khaled species and placed the subjects in tank-like travel machines whose design was based on his own life support chair. Genesis of the Daleks marked a new era for the depiction of the species, with most of their previous history either forgotten or barely referred to again. Future stories in the classic series, which followed a rough story arc, would also focus more on Davros, much to the dissatisfaction of some fans who felt that the Daleks should take centre stage rather than merely becoming the minions of their creator. A single Dalek appearing in the episode Dalek seemed to be the sole Dalek survivor of the Time War. A Dalek Emperor returned at the end of the 2005 series, having rebuilt the Dalek race with genetic material harvested from human subjects. This new Emperor saw itself as a god, and the Daleks were shown worshipping it. These Daleks had their fleet, however they were destroyed in the parting of the ways. The 2006 season finale Army of Ghosts and Doomsday featured a squad of 4 Dalek survivors from that old empire, known as the Cult of Skaro, led by the Black Dalek, Sek, that had survived the Time War by escaping into the void between dimensions. They emerged at Canary Wharf, along with the Genesis Ark, a Time Lord prison vessel containing millions of Daleks, thanks to the actions of the Torchwood Institute. With the Cybermen appearing at the same time, this resulted in all-out war between the two groups in London, which was resolved when the 10th Doctor caused both groups to be sucked back into the void. However, the Cult of Skaro survived by utilising an
emergency temporal shift!
These 4 Daleks, Sek, Jast, Thay and Khan, returned in the 2-part story Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks, in which, while stranded in 1930s New York, they set up a base in the partially built Empire State Building and attempt to rebuild the Dalek race. To this end, Dalek Sek merges with a human being to become a human-Dalek hybrid. The cult then set about creating human Daleks by formatting the brains of captured humans, with the intention of producing hybrids which remain fully human in appearance, but with Dalek minds. Sek, however, starts to become so human that he changes the DNA to make the hybrids more human. This angers the rest of the cult, resulting in mutiny and the death of Sek, Thay and Jast, as well as the wiping out of all the hybrids. This leaves Dalek Khan as the last Dalek in existence. When the Doctor makes Khan realise that he's the last of his kind, Khan again uses an emergency temporal shift and escapes. The Daleks returned in the 2008 season 2-part finale, The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, accompanied once again by Davros. This story reveals that Khan's temporal shift sent him into the Time War, where he rescued Davros, in the process gaining the ability to see into the future at the cost of his own sanity. Davros has created a new race of Daleks using only his body's cells. The episode depicts a Dalek invasion of Earth led by a Red Supreme Dalek who, it appears, has kept Davros and Khan imprisoned in the Vault, a section of the Dalek flagship, the Crucible. Davros and the Daleks plan to destroy reality itself with a reality bomb, for which they need the stolen planets. The plan fails thanks to the interference of Donna and Khan himself, who has been manipulating events to destroy the Daleks after realising the severity of the atrocities they've committed. The Daleks then returned in the 2010 episode Victory of the Daleks. The Daleks who escaped the destruction of Davros' empire have fallen back in time and by chance managed to retrieve the progenitor. This is a tiny apparatus which contains original Dalek DNA. The activation of the progenitor results in the creation of a new Dalek paradigm. The new paradigm Daleks deem their creators inferior and exterminate them. They're organised into different roles: drone, scientist, strategist, supreme and eternal, which are identifiable with colour-coded armour instead of the identification plates under the eye stalk used by their predecessors. They escape the Doctor at the end of the episode via time travel and with the intent to rebuild their empire. They next appear in Asylum of the Daleks in 2012, where they're shown to have greatly increased numbers and have a parliament, in addition to the traditional modern Daleks. All designs from both the classic and the new series appear in this story. All record of the Doctor is removed in this story from their collective consciousness. And that's all for this week. As always, thank you for listening. And if you have any feedback, remember you can now post it on Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast on Facebook, or email the show at respectthething@outlook.com. So until next time...
We are entombed, but we live on. This is only the beginning. We will prepare. We will grow stronger. When the time is right, we will emerge and take our rightful place as the supreme power of the universe!
Thank you for listening to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all copyright and property of the BBC, and no infringement is intended.